Welcome back to OTR. It's time now for our political roundtable. And joining us this morning, Democratic analyst Marianne Marsh, Republican analyst Lizzie Guyton. Great to have you with us this morning, guys. And let's start with a conversation with Congressman McGovern. Takeaways. What did you feel, Marianne?
Jim McGovern is refreshing. He is willing to call balls and strikes, call people out all the time. And it's that kind of leadership and energy that actually everybody needs. You don't see it in the Senate, but that's exactly what people in the country are looking for. And if you want a really good laugh, please watch Jim McGovern's Welcome Back to All the Republicans after they were on a 7-week vacation.
Yeah. Saw a little bit flawless. Of that at the top of the show.
That was good. He said to us when his mother says to him, clean up your language, you know. So she wishes that he would. Lizzie, any reaction?
Well, we just heard the congressman stop short of calling for Leader Schumer to step aside. So after a 35-day historic, shameful shutdown where Democrats really didn't get anything out of it over this healthcare issue, we're not seeing him make any bold statements to the contrary of the leadership that is currently in power.
All right, let's talk about the Jeffrey Epstein files, that discharge petition that the House got the 218 signatures needed to force a vote to release the files. 4 Republicans were among those signatures. White House officials even met with Representative Lauren Boebert to try to get her to remove her name from that petition, but that did not happen. What does this say about the Republican Party right now, Lizzie?
Well, the first thing that Congress does after this historic shutdown is to bring up the Epstein files. You know, the country is already in chaos from SNAP benefits, from flight cancellations. The economy has massive consequences from the shutdown. It just shows how out of touch it is with the American people and what they really are expecting out of their government. Democrats want to talk about this because it's embarrassing to the president, and yes, it is. However, I think if there was a smoking gun out there, we would have known about it by now. And even if this petition makes it through, Trump is not going to sign it.
What do you think, Marianne?
Let me correct one thing that was said in the last segment. The Biden administration did not release any of these files because Ghislaine Maxwell was still on trial. So it's illegal to do that. So as soon as they were ready to come out, they were coming out, but look who's been holding them. It's been the Trump folks. So the Trump people and Republicans have spent more time protecting Epstein and God knows who else and denying people health care and SNAP benefits and everything else. So Republicans are spending all their time covering up for Donald Trump and doing nothing to help the American people. And when you look at it that way, when Republicans have finally realized they lost the election 2 weeks ago, they're 30 points underneath everything. Republicans are starting to crack and pull away from Trump. Finally, that maybe the Epstein file might be a bridge too far for them, and that should be an easy call. Everything should come out. Everybody should know everybody. Let the chips fall where they may. That's the bare minimum.
Well, but to Lizzie's point, are the Epstein files the biggest thing facing the country?
The media clearly thinks so.
Well, that doesn't mean the media is right.
Well, exactly. But you can't, when you listen to the survivors and you look at the pressure Donald Trump has put on Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, 3 women I've never said a good word about ever. At least they not only signed on, but they stood up to that pressure. That tells you everything. So who's covering up for who? And it's clear that they're covering up for Donald Trump. And maybe finally Republicans will see that it's just a little too far to stand with them on this one.
Next item, we, as you know, coming off the longest government shutdown in history. We saw SNAP benefits disrupted, widespread cancellations and delays at airports, federal workers going without paychecks. So what do you think Capitol Hill lawmakers will learn from this government shutdown, if anything? And will they take those lessons into negotiations in January, which is right around the corner again, Marianne?
If you fight Donald Trump, then you win. If you fold, then you lose. Every time on both of those. So there are 75 days left before the funding for the government runs out the end of January. The health care benefits run out the end of December, and people have to make their decisions, and they're already seeing quantum leaps in the prices. That's what everyone's learned. So fight Donald Trump and you will win, and that's what you have to do for the American people.
Lizzie?
But is that what the Democratic Party is right now? Is it the party that is fighting Trump? Like, what about everything else? And what about the affordability issues? And what about the healthcare issues? I think the biggest losers in any government shutdown is the party that shuts the government down. Shutting it down over a policy position doesn't work. Republicans have demonstrated that time after time. They just did in 2018 over the border wall. And it's not going to forward any of their messaging at this point of all the issues that people are really talking about. And the losers were the American people on this one.
Affordability, when your health care insurance goes up 2, 3, 4 times, no one can afford it. And then they drop the insurance, and guess who pays more? all of us. So
What about all the other issues that were caused with the government shutdown when we're talking about affordability? People not getting their SNAP benefits, people being told buy 2 plane tickets so that you can get from here to there for business, to see a loved one, to get access to healthcare. Some people are flying into Boston to do that.
If you're fortunate enough to be able to afford that.
It's not making anything better for anything. They made a gamble on it and it was a wrong move.
So you're saying trade a flight so you don't have to pay, you pay more in health care. I mean, first of all, let's remind everyone at home, Republicans run the White House, the House, and the Senate, and they're done a terrible job. Not only do you see that in the polls, but also in the fact that they've lost everything, okay, in an election 2 weeks ago. But in terms of affordability, there's no question. Healthcare is the biggest expense, and Donald Trump, to Jim McGovern's point, went out of his way and worked hard to
changed with
deny
healthcare
them
affordability with the shutdown. Affordability is absolutely an issue. It absolutely is. Healthcare affordability is not the only thing. By the way, the American people did not need a government shutdown to know that their healthcare is unaffordable. They already knew that. They've been living that every day.
Then why won't the Republicans? First of all, Donald Trump has promised a healthcare plan for 10 years every 2 weeks, and the Republican Party has done the same.
But what did the Democrats get out of the shutdown when it comes to helping healthcare affordability? Nothing.
In the end, if we have an election in the midterms, the Democrats will win everything.
Well, let's talk about the filibuster. President Trump has been calling for an end to the filibuster, and this is what he had to say last week when he signed the government funding bill.
We also want to call for a termination to the filibuster so that this can never happen again. So I say terminate the filibuster because, by the way, the Democrats will do it immediately if they ever assumed office, which hopefully they won't.
Lizzie, what do you make of Congress not bending to that pressure?
I think Trump was bringing this up as a tactic. I mean, we have seen in the past
repeatedly.
Harry Reid did end the filibuster for certain nominations for the lower courts. And then when the Republicans came into the majority in 2017, that's how they got Gorsuch through. So I think the party in power, has to be really careful. Everybody knows down there that you're not going to be in power forever. And if you're giving away that ability from the filibuster, then eventually you're going to be on the short end of the stick with that.
What do you think, Marianne?
Donald Trump's trying to be a dictator, and Republicans are finally realizing that maybe if they keep following Trump, it leads to a road to nowhere. So they are not going to do it.
We continue on the record. Stay with us.